Welcome to the Daybreak with Jeff Slakey podcast. I'm so happy you found us. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this with your circle of influence. It's a collection of the interviews, news, and conversation during Daybreak with Jeff Slakey on I-Fiber One News Radio, KMAS, weekdays from 6 to 9. Hey, good Tuesday to you, the Daybreak Show now, I-Fiber One. I'm Jeff Slakey along with Spencer Hughes. Good morning, Spencer.
Hey, good morning to you. What's going on today?
Not a lot. Talk to me a little bit about our interview today with Dr. Patrick Porter.
Yeah, he is a neuroscientist, an entrepreneur. He's an author, motivational speaker, and he is going to share with us some very interesting perspectives and tips on how parents and kids can kind of coexist better and get the work done better for at-home schooling. So that's the subject of, it's a whole new world for most people out there where the kids are at home like all the time. They're not going into the classrooms in most locations, and students, teachers, and parents are kind of at wit's end. So Dr. Porter is going to give us some really helpful advice on how to coexist better and how to get the job done.
That's great. Also, more local news and information to start your day. The weather for the day, the week continues to be pretty good?
Yeah, it's going to be nice. It'll be sunny by the afternoon, some fog early as we've been having most mornings, but a high of 74. And then mostly cloudy through tomorrow, and then the showers actually might start coming early. Thursday through Sunday looks pretty wet.
Mason County Public Health notified of 16 additional Mason County residents testing positive for COVID-19, brings the total to 477 positive cases in Mason County since March. Also, Mason County, unfortunately, been notified of 2 additional COVID-related deaths. Some more details now of numbers from that long-term care facility outbreak that we were telling you about yesterday. So with that 16 additional cases, 6 are from that long-term care facility outbreak. Now 34 residents, primary residents in Mason County, 34, and long-term care employees, 19 now are tested positive for COVID-19, and the deaths from the long-term care facility are 4. Please do what you can to reduce the spread. At the earliest sign of any symptoms, please reach out to the respiratory illness triage line. They can assist you in scheduling an appointment at Mason Health's drive-through COVID-19 testing center. And we're hearing more about President Trump, and I think throughout the day, too, we'll get status updates as he returned to the White House from Walter Reed last night. What else are we hearing?
Yeah, some survivors of COVID-19 and people who have lost loved ones to the pandemic are angry over the president's advice not to fear the disease. The world's most prominent coronavirus patient tweeted yesterday that he's feeling great and that people shouldn't let COVID-19 dominate them. Seneca Nation member and New York resident Mark Papage lost his mother, grandmother, and aunt to the virus. He was finding it tough to follow the president's advice not to let the virus dominate your life. On the contrary, he says his loss will forever dominate the rest of his life. At least 210,000 Americans have died from the virus since March.
And Washington State Health Secretary John Weissman sent out a release after the president's statements. The president's tweet is highly irresponsible and makes every public health official's job that much more difficult. COVID-19 is a serious disease that is easily spread. We shouldn't fear it. We should protect ourselves from it. Wear your mask, watch your distance, wash your hands. These are the basic facts. Again, that is a tweet from Washington State Secretary of Health John Weissman following the president's advice after leaving Walter Reed last night.
For the second time, the ACLU of Washington has filed a motion of contempt against the city of Seattle on behalf of Black Lives Matter Seattle King County in a lawsuit over police response to protests. Lily Bolke reports.
For the second time, the ACLU of Washington has filed a motion of contempt against the city of Seattle on behalf of Black Lives Matter, Seattle King County, in a lawsuit over police response to protests. A federal judge this summer barred Seattle officers from using blast balls, pepper spray, foam-tipped projectiles, and other crowd control weapons, with the exception of responding to a specific imminent threat of personal injury or property damage. But Molly Tack Hooper with the ACLU of Washington says that order hasn't been followed.
SPD will decide at some point, either very quickly or after a little while, that the protest is no longer lawful. They'll declare it to be a riot or an unlawful assembly, and then they'll start using these less lethal weapons to push the whole crowd back.
The first motion of contempt in late July led to a preliminary injunction, and the city agreed to expand the restrictions on the less lethal weapons. This second motion alleges the city has failed to take the necessary steps to comply. Tack Hooper says one of those critical restrictions is that police have to give a dispersal order that's audible to everyone in the area before using force. And they have to give protesters, legal observers, medics, and journalists a meaningful opportunity to get out of the way.
We've seen SPD actually block off side streets so that people who do want to leave this crowd after the police start using these really scary weapons can't do so.
She says they're now waiting for the court to respond to the motion. Tack Hooper adds it's crucial that people have the power to protest without fear of violence from their city's law enforcement agencies. For Washington News Service, I'm Lily Bolke.
Well, thanks, Lily. Tomorrow night, we are expected to still have that vice presidential debate here on the radio. Coverage at 5. The debate starts in earnest at 6 from Salt Lake City, Utah. Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence will be on the stage together. I think, Spencer, I read 12 feet distant, both, though, on the stage together. And Senator Harris is going to have some plexiglass around her table. They're sitting at tables for this one.
Oh, is that up to the candidate, do you know? Or is Pence not the same setup? I don't know what's going on with him.
Well, I think the debate commission works out all these logistics with the campaigns early on, like the rules and the setup and where you're standing and the who goes first and stuff like that. So any change, like the adding of that plexiglass, would have had to be requested to the debate commission. Sure. And then probably approved of by both sides to not show any sort of unseen advantage.
Yeah, I'll have the green M&Ms only, please, at the podium. There's good news for users of the Marvin Road overpass, State Route 510 in Lacey. The overpass and associated ramps are open to travel. On last Friday, the overpass and ramps were closed following crews to pave the entire overpass, install lane striping, and complete several other key work activities. The weekend closure is a major milestone for the project that upgraded the existing overpass into a diverging diamond interchange. WashDOT would like to thank travelers for their patience during the extended closure.
And Seahawks play the Vikings this weekend. Sunday Night Football, pregame at 3, kickoff at 5:20. The Hawks are presented by Shelton Health and Rehab, Rivera's Shellfish, South Sound Appliance, Dogtown Grooming, Neil's Pharmacy, and the Shelton Athletic Club. Again today on the show, a great conversation with Dr. Patrick Porter, and more coming up here on Daybreak.
From the iFiber One News Radio studios, you're listening to Daybreak.
It's Spencer Hughes and Jeff Slakey on Daybreak. Thanks so much for tuning in. Good morning to you. We appreciate your listenership and support out there. One of the areas where people have been having a lot of stress and anxiety stem from is this whole at-home schooling that many parents are going through. It's stressful on the parents, the kids, and of course the teachers and administrators. It's stressful for everyone. We're going to talk right now about how to maybe better deal with it and the things that many of us are going through. And our guest we're very privileged to have right now is Dr. Patrick Porter, an award-winning author and speaker. He's devoted his career to neuroscience, something that I find very fascinating, and I'm trying to learn more about it all the time. And also brainwave entrainment. He's the creator of BrainTap. You can find it at braintap.com. And he's emerged as a leader in the digital health and wellness field. And this is just a growing field. It's very, very fascinating to me. BrainTap's digital tools and mind development apps use creative visualization and relaxation, biohacking techniques. These have made tremendous advances in helping mental, physical, and emotional health issues, which is something we're all tackling right now, especially during a pandemic. We're in a pandemic here, and this is something most of us have never lived through. And thankfully, we have people like Dr. Porter to help us through this. Dr. Porter, welcome, and thanks a lot for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me here. It's good to be on the show.
Well, it's a privilege. We have 6 kids between us. We have 4 living at home. We have the youngest is 13, and she's in 7th grade, almost 13. She's in 7th grade, and we have a high schooler as well. And just millions of people virtually overnight are having to help facilitate the education of their kids in this transition of surviving school, something that we all kind of took for granted, didn't we? I mean, before the pandemic, kids always complained about school and certain teachers and too much homework, too many essays they had to write and things. But this is something that none of us have really ever seen, right?
Right. There's very few parents have been trained to be teachers, and now they're thrust into that part of their life that are taking up a major part of their everyday interactions with their children.
And how are people coping? How are parents and kids and teachers coping from what you see as a doctor studying neuroscience? Are we doing pretty well considering that, it's kind of a trial by fire, as they say, for all of us?
Yeah, I think it's all depending on how people take it. I mean, some people are taking it very seriously and they have a lot of structure, and I think those are the people that are doing better than others. People kind of let it go and see how it plays out. It's not working too well for them. So it's kind of a flip side of the other. You've got to, because their children are used to structure, and if they don't have that structure, of course, kids will be kids. They're thinking this is the same as a weekend, so they're not really, buckling down. And we have some tips that we've taught some people over the times, and it's worked pretty well for them to get their brains right into learning mode.
Yeah, and that's what I want to touch on with you, because one thing that I notice, and my kids are very, very good students. They're all excellent students, and it's something that is just normal human behavior, and that is when you're in kind of a more relaxed environment like your house or your bedroom or your kitchen, there tends to be less formality. There tends to be just the way kids will act with a teacher on Skype or on Zoom versus being in the classroom. And that's got to be a big challenge. I'm sure teachers are having a lot of heartache over that because they can't really command the same level of presence, can they? When the kids are right there and the students are right there in front of them sitting in desks and they're all facing forward. Now you have kids in their PJs and they're texting their friends in one hand and typing with the other and kind of paying attention, and the breakfast is ready, the waffles just popped out of the toaster. It seems like this wouldn't necessarily be an ideal way for kids to get an education, in my mind anyway, but it's what we've got, and we've got to somehow make it work.
Right. I think the parents that have actually set aside a place where school was going to take place, away from the TV and other distractions, even the pets. I mean, you have to get all those distractions are going to cause the student's mind to be distracted, and of course, we all know what happens even with things online. I mean, you can get sucked away into the social media black holes very easily. Well, even younger kids can get pulled away by their cats or dogs or, whatever. So there's ways we can set up the brain to learn better, but it has to be a family situation, where everyone's communicating and going through it because, like you said, no one's been through this. So it's a matter of, and I tried to homeschool once when I was on a book tour, and it was a very hard job. We got through it, but it was very difficult.
Well, that's the thing, too, is how are parents able to do this? This is what's really amazing to me is that we both used to work, my wife and myself. I work a lot of hours outside of the house, so she takes the bulk of all this responsibility. But let's say for the sake of argument, she was having to work, too, as many couples have to do. They're struggling to make ends meet as it is, right? So I can't even imagine how parents are doing this when you have the older kids, you can kind of hope you have faith in them to be responsible and to buckle down, kind of like when you leave them at home by themselves. You go out on a date or a movie or something, or go out with friends or an anniversary dinner. The kids have to kind of buckle up and take care of the house. But what about all the parents that can't be home with their kids? I mean, especially the younger kids. I don't know how they're making it, Doctor.
Right. I think that we'll only find that out once this is all over, because that is a big question. And one parent at least has to take the responsibility of being there maybe every other day. And so that means that you have to ask your boss, or if you're in business for yourself, you've got to take time away. I mean, we've been very fortunate with our staff. We've let them stay home with their children while they're doing it in work, but a lot of places that's not allowed. So I don't know how they're dealing with it. But you have to set priorities and set boundaries, and there might be some difficulty there.
Now, let's start from the beginning. The alarm clocks go off for the kids and the parents. The teachers are probably up hours before that, getting everything ready for Zoom and everything to go live. What are some steps that parents and students can take to make this an optimal situation for everybody? What are some of the things we can work on to make the home a good, productive learning environment?
Right. There's some things you need to do and some things you have to stop doing. Number one, don't ever turn on the TV before a student starts to learn, because that kind of hijacks their awareness. The TV becomes a passive way of learning, and it can be used for good or for bad. The first thing we always recommend people do is get into brain prep. Brain prep is doing some form of physical activity where you might have them. If you don't know what that is, go to YouTube, get some children exercises for the age group that you have. Get their brain going. Once the brain gets involved and wakes up, we need to get that brain out of sleep mode and actually set structure. So you do this every day. So the brain starts going, hey, this is my time for learning. And then if we can identify what the peak times are for learning outside of when they have to be on Zoom with their teachers, then those are the times that you have them read their books or do whatever they need to do that's their own individual learning. Everyone has their own timing, but it's always best to do is the most you can first thing in the morning, not wait. Don't put it off till it's a good time that day, but get started, push through what you need to do, and then if you're going to take some time off, take it off in the afternoon. That's actually true for adults as well with their day. If they can do problem solving in the morning, they're going to have a much more of their brain power available to them to do those things. And take breaks and celebrate victories. Don't push just because they finish one thing, say, okay, now it's time for the next. You've got to give we live in a reward mechanism. The dopamine, which is unfortunately that neurotransmitter for addiction, can also be used it's our reward mechanism, those reward pathways. We need that data boy. Now, they're used to getting in the classroom. If they raise their hand, they answer a question, or they get the praise from their fellow students or from their teacher. They're not getting that now. So the parent has to give them those, in psychology, what we call strokes. They've got to be told, hey, you're doing a good job. But if they're off track or off target, there needs to be not, physical consequences, but there needs to be consequences and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's the reward for the day. What is it you want to do today? And say, when we finish this, this, and this, so that they start organizing in their conscious awareness. This causes their neurology to start working with the process instead of trying to avoid it. Children by nature are going to try to avoid doing things because they're not in the environment where they're used to learning. So the setting is so important. Get away from where they might normally watch TV or play and set up some kind of structured environment where they can say, this is where I'm going to learn. Just like they go to school, we need that in the home.
Now, one thing I remember, and I think we all have memories of this from childhood, is, Mom, Dad, you're cramping my style. Step away a little bit. You know what I mean? Like when your parents would pick you up from school, you'd have them pick you up at the park, because you're too embarrassed to have your father or mother pick you up. Should parents keep a distance kind of and do their own thing? I notice that I try to with our almost 13-year-old daughter. Usually I'm at work, but the day off that I have when I am home, I try to be off in the distance or cooking breakfast or doing something that's not going to be distracting, but I don't want to be kind of a helicopter parent. Is there a danger in that too, where parents should kind of be maybe in their own den or office doing their own thing, or maybe even stepping outside of the house for a little bit? Is that helpful for the kids?
I think for the right children, like in my case, we have two grandchildren. Sophia, who's 10 years old, you could put her in a room, she'd do all her work and come out and show you it's all done. And she doesn't want you to be there. But Eli, who's 8 years old, if you're not there with him, kind of coaching him through the process, you're not going to get anything done because he'd rather go throw the football around or go run and go do something. So I think it depends on the child, but you should give them as much space as you can because we want to teach them to become participatory in the learning process. And it's going to, that way when they go back to school, they're going to do even better than teaching them bad habits, where they don't engage. We want them to be engaging. I think it's the more you can let them on their own and they do it, that's better. But there are some kids that just aren't ready for that. They don't have the mentality for it.
Sure. And you recommend something that's very important. Parents should really be doing this anyway, and that is having kind of emotional check-ins with their kids. Is it easier to take that for granted now that we are with our kids more than ever? Is it easier? Is it harder? Are parents kind of taking it for granted that the kids are at home, so I don't need to check in with them as much as when they're gone out of the house for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day?
Yes, I think that's exactly what's happening. And I think the main thing is if you can give it back to the child in a way that you say, what would you like to do about this? What would you do if that happened? Don't threaten them but get them to start thinking for themselves. That's better than, forcing them. If you let them become part of the solution, usually they will become part of the solution. But if you're telling them or talking down to them, or telling them that they might be not that smart or that they never stay organized, I would in those ways I'd say, you know what would we need to do to make you understand this better? What would you need me to do? Instead of telling them they're stupid or telling them if they're not engaging, say, if we need to get this done so you can go out and play, what do you need me to do to help you to get there? And one thing we always tell people is you can never argue with your own information. So if you can get the children to say it, they're usually better about that when they know that they're part of the solution instead of focusing always on the problem.
That was Dr. Patrick Porter here on Daybreak. His website is BrainTap.com. More of the Daybreak Show coming up straight ahead. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Daybreak on iFiber One News Radio.
Good morning to you, the 6th day of October, Spencer. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. What's going on?
Well, the kids in the neighborhood have, since September, been asking me, since beginning of September, have asked me when I'm going to start putting up my Halloween decorations.
Oh, yes.
And here it is, the 6th of October, and normally they're all up and running and everything's inflated, but this year we're taking it a little slower as we're trying to figure out just what Halloween is even really going to look like this year. I know you don't have to worry about it too much. Not many folks head down and around the loop, so there's not a lot of people for that. But we, over the years, have had a ton of kids come by, and this year it's a Saturday night, and I don't know. Are you guys talking about Halloween or what you think you'll see or what you should do?
You know, I've seen a couple of houses decorated, but that's about it. And you're right, the houses it's just kind of a country road, and they're kind of recessed behind gates and stuff, so it's not conducive to door-to-door trick-or-treating like our previous neighborhoods have been. So we're not really dealing with it, and the kids are older, and Gingy, who's almost 13, she'll be 13 at the end of the month, she's kind of like, she's thinking of dressing up for something, just even like at home, just for fun. But I don't think we're going to be going out. And
we are struggling to determine what to do with Kaiser and whether or not we go around the neighborhood or if we say to him, well, man, we're not going to be able to go around the neighborhood, but we'll have candy here at the house that we'll just eat, I guess. The State Department of Health has sent out some information already. We'll go over this throughout the rest of the month, but they are suggesting, of course, to protect yourself and your loved ones by wearing a cloth face covering, avoid confined spaces. That might be a good one. Avoid close contact with people outside of your household. So now that, washing hands, those two are the kind of interesting factors that we're talking about. Now, we've seen online where people have built contraptions to deliver the candy to kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty fun. Everything from pipes.
Like a slide.
Yeah, slide pipes.
Yeah.
Conveyor belts, pulleys. They've gotten pretty creative.
So that is a protection for me as the homeowner giving out the candy. But if every kid goes to the 64 homes in our neighborhood or whatever, what do we have to do with the candy after that? Do we have to disinfect it? And if we disinfect it, how long does that take? And what are the process there?
Yeah.
It's just really up in the air right now.
It really is. It reminds me of my childhood. I don't know if they did this. You're a little younger than I am, but I can't even imagine the stuff that we used to do as kids at the school. We'd have Halloween parties and stuff, and families and neighborhoods would have parties. Do you remember bobbing for apples? I always thought that was like a gross thing. I never liked doing it even as a kid. I thought back then even I was thinking, I was overanalyzing it, that here we have kids putting their teeth on an apple in a big barrel of water. And
right.
I mean, talk about,
everybody
talk about manifesting germs in there.
Missing.
Yeah.
You're not, it takes 10 people to start to bite down on an apple before you can really get a good hold of it.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that's a safe bet that will not be around for most festivities post-COVID ever again.
it's not just Halloween, but it's fall festivals. It's, we're not sure what to do about pumpkin patches.
Yeah, that's true.
Call ahead and make reservations.
I never thought about that at all, but that's always been a ritual of ours. We're still kind of discovering the areas here in Washington for the fall season and Halloween, but that was always a big thing, the hay rides and the mazes, the corn mazes. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about that, a corn maze. Usually you're kind of separate there anyway. You kind of go off with your family, and then a couple minutes behind you is the next person. But still, just all these traditions of the holidays, and we're going to be hitting them one after the other. As you know, they're already selling the Christmas trees and the wreaths and everything, and it's not even Halloween yet. So we got Halloween, we got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, all slammed in together.
I was reading some of the radio trade magazines, and it was saying that expect an early Christmas season where some of these traditional radio stations that play all Christmas all the time may even start before Halloween.
Oh, no, that's too much. That's a topic for another day, but I believe December's safe. Usually after the first week of December, I like hearing it, but not November, certainly not October.
Well, the only person I know that would appreciate it before Halloween would be Troy Jasmine.
I think he's in March listening to it, no?
If you need a Christmas countdown, all you got to do is send him a message and he'll get it for you. Toot sweet. So Halloween is coming up. We're just a few weeks away. It's going to be a Saturday. We want, of course, everybody to be safe. An option perhaps too, a scavenger hunt at home, dress up and hide candy throughout the house, have a Hollywood movie marathon with household members.
That can be fun.
You can even do online costume contests, or say do like an online pumpkin carving reveal. So there are options. It's not ideal, but there are options as we move close. Of course, now this is all on the 6th of October. If cases rise and more numbers increase, like we're starting to see across the country, all this may be moot, and we may be just all succumb to staying at home.
Yeah, and we got to make the best of it. I mean, it really isn't all that bad. I know I've always been a stickler, like with traditions. I've always been a traditionalist. And then the older I get, I'm kind of like, well, you got to do what you got to do. You could still have fun. You could still... Like you said, most kids just want the candy, the loot at the end of the night, right? And if you get them a great big Costco bag of candy, I don't think too many kids are going to complain that they can't do some of the traditional things.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting dilemma and interesting world we're living in. And Halloween is just one more focal point for us to look at here as we move through the end of the year. More Daybreak Show coming up. Thank you so much for listening to today's Daybreak with Jeff Slakey podcast. Again, I'm so happy and honored you found us and chose to listen. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this with your circle of influence. It's a collection of some of the interviews, news, and conversation during Daybreak with Jeff Slakey on iFiber One News Radio KMAS, weekdays from 6 to 9. Thank you so much again, and talk with you next time.